Hey, and welcome to another video around AI animation. In this video, I'm going to take you through the process to be able to set up and install ComfyUI in the cloud by renting one or multiple high-end GPUs, allowing you to unlock really fast generations. And this can be really handy if you want to free up your computer at home, or you're working on a low-spec machine at home, or perhaps you're on a Mac and you're hitting multiple crashes or VRAM issues. And the process and the bits of code I'm going to share, whether you're installing on Vast or locally or on another platform, should be much the same. So I'm going to take you through the steps to install the software, then ComfyUI Manager, some models, ControlNet, things like that. And I'll do it as quickly as possible, explaining what the bits of code do as I go through it. So if you ever hit any problems, you can try and troubleshoot it and understand what the code's doing and maybe go back some steps and try things again. But hopefully, if you follow these steps at the moment, it should go nice and smoothly. This is a tutorial I've been planning to make for a while, but I've been distracted by making my own ControlNet After Effects plugin, various other videos, plus the day job doing lots of more traditional digital client animation work. With all that in mind, let's jump into the video. Okay, so I'm going to try and go through this nice and quickly. So heading over to the Vast website via the link, you'll be presented with this smart looking page, and you can spin down here and check out some of the information. We're going to go ahead and press console. If it's your first time on the website, you should be prompted to set up your account and enter some basic billing information. I'm not going to go through that today because I think it's fairly obvious. You're then presented with the various instances that are available to rent, and I'm going to quickly explain these before looking at some templates. So you'll see there's loads of GPUs available to rent, and these are on people's computers around the world, and they're just making some money out of sharing their GPU and making it available. But if you are worried about any security issues, you can go down to here and tick Secure Cloud, Only Trusted Data Centers, and that will reduce the pool of instances available to rent, but they are from trusted data centers. But if you're less worried and you're just doing some hobbyist projects, leave it unticked and you'll have a wider pool available. You can set the disk space you'd like for your project. I'd recommend at least 40 gigabytes, up to 100 plus, depending how many models you're thinking of installing and generations you're going to create on the platform. Okay, so let's take a quick look at some of the instances. So this one here, for example, which is a RTX 1490, you can rent the GPU for 42 cents an hour. For 118 gigabytes of storage, it's 8 cents per hour. One thing bearing in mind, you also have this internet fee. So this one is charging you $10.24 per terabyte uploaded or downloaded from there. And it can impact the total cost of renting that instance. So if you go to some other ones, for example, this one's renting the internet out of $5.12. This one here is completely free, so there's no extra cost for uploading or downloading, but it is charging a tiny bit more for the GPU. So it's worth shopping around and seeing which ones seem like a good fit, look at the reliability, and consider things like that before choosing which instance you're after. You could go big and rent 8 RTX 1490s. This one's $5.84 per hour with low cost for the storage, but obviously that total does add up a lot if you were to rent it for a whole month. But it could be worth setting up, using it for 1 hour to do some really high-end generations really quickly, and then pause the instance and just pay that lower cost for the storage fee so you can have access to tons of GPUs as and when you need it. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the instances and what to consider when choosing which one you might want to rent. Now we're going to hop over to templates, and this allows you to select some basic things to install into your setup, the hardware that you're going to be renting. And there's some presets here. There is one for ComfyUI, which, whilst it might work, I think the process I'm going to take you through is better, so you have a good understanding of how it works, and you can watch things being installed and go through the process so you can troubleshoot it when things go wrong, as I think this approach may be a bit hit and miss. If you wanted to start completely from scratch, you could choose something like this one, the PyTorch 2.01 with CUDA 11.7 developer version, and then add bits of code and go from there. There is CUDA version 12, which I don't think is currently compatible with everything you need to install for ComfyUI. That will no doubt change in the future. But ignoring all that, if you spin down, you may see this in the popular setting, or go even further, and I'll share a link to this template which I've created, which is called AI Animation version 3. If I press edit, just to show you what's inside. So this is what's customized about the template. So it's installing that CUDA 11.8 version, and it's got the appropriate Ubuntu version to go with it. There's a Docker option, so it's going to set up a Jupyter directory using port 3000. So that's the port number that ComfyUI is going to run on. Don't worry about why this works, but it does. we're going to be running Jupyter. We're going to enable the Jupyter Lab interface, and we're going to leave HTTPS available if you want to use it in the future. Jupyter basically gives you web access to a folder structure and a terminal where you can run bits of code to be able to install things and run ComfyUI. The last piece is the onStart script, so it's going to make a directory called /workspace where our files are going to be installed. There's some bits for the environment which you can leave as they are, and there's this bit here /start.sh, and this tells Vast once the instance is up and running, whenever you press open on their interface, it will open up this file, so we can put code into this file to load ComfyUI to make a nice easy process. So I'll take you through that later on. Everything else you can ignore, and you can then press select and save, or on this page just press select. This takes us back to the instances page where we can choose the amount of disk space we want to store and spin through and choose a GPU. And I've not done this before, but I'm actually going to rent 8 4090s just to see how blooming fast it actually is. So this costs $4.80 an hour for the GPU, it's $1.34 per day for the storage, and there's no internet upload or download fees. So I'm just going to go ahead and press rent. So that's using the AI Animation version 3 template, and we're renting that instance. And then if we load the instances page, you'll see I have 2 instances. I've got one instance which has 2 RTX 4090s, which is currently inactive, and that's the one I've been using for my own ComfyUI projects. And as it's inactive, I'm just paying for the hard drive space. And then we have our all-powerful 8x RTX 4090 instance, which is currently loading. Okay, and now that's finished creating the instance, and it currently says connecting here because we have not installed ComfyUI, so there's nothing for it to load. Once we do that and finish the install, we'll actually have a button here that says open, which you can click to load and open up ComfyUI. And if you need to restart ComfyUI, you can just press the reboot instance here, or we can do some code via terminal as well. If when you open Jupyter, which I'm going to do in a second, or you press open, if you're presented with an internet security message, you can choose to ignore and it will go through the steps absolutely fine. Or you can install a SSL certificate, which if you head over to the FAQ section, there's some information on where to install that depending on your browser. I've got that installed in Chrome already, so I won't have that issue. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Jupyter. So this is the basic Jupyter window you're first presented with. You can see we've got your folder structure for your hardware. We've got that workspace folder that was installed with that setup code. And over here you'll see there's something called terminal, which is much like a terminal which you can run on your local computer, whether you're on a Mac, PC or Linux machine. So I'm going to go ahead and press terminal. And this presents us with our basic terminal where we can control what the system's doing via text. It's currently in the root folder. If we wanted to move within that workspace folder, we could type CD, which changes directory, press space and type workspace. And that's going to look in the root for that folder. If you wanted a subfolder, you could then put / and enter the name of that folder, and it will move terminal into that folder, giving you access to the information there. So we're just going to jump into that workspace folder, and you can press CD to move back. And there you go, the most basic way of navigating around terminal folders. I'm then going to jump over to aianimation.com, which is the creative website I've been building over the past few months, allowing creatives to create profiles for free, share videos, network and things like that. I also showcase new creatives. But right at the top, we have a tutorial section, and I've currently got a link to the ComfyUI tutorial, which we're going through. If you spin down, you'll see there's a text version of this tutorial going through the process for setting up that Vast template. And I then start sharing blocks of code, which we're going to install in ComfyUI. And I'm going to take you through each block, explaining what each one does. If this button moves in the future, I'll just share a link in the video description below. Right, here we go. We're going to do some fun copying and pasting. First of all, we're going to go to block 1. Go to block 1, highlight all the text, and copy it. Jump back into Jupyter, press paste, and press enter. This code's going to check and update the system if it needs to. It's going to install Python. It's going to install files for a virtual environment. It's then going to move into that workspace folder, and it's going to download the ComfyUI software files using the term get clone from GitHub. It's then going to move into a new folder within workspace called ComfyUI that's just been installed by this, and then it's going to set up a virtual environment using Python, and then it's going to activate that environment. Jump back into here, and you can see it's been through all those steps, and it says done. And it's now in that ComfyUI directory. We can then move on to block 2, copy, jump into Jupyter, press paste, press enter. And this is going to install FFmpeg, which allows for MP4 video creation. Another library, I can't remember which one that one's for, but it helps ComfyUI run. It's going to ensure we're installing the correct versions of pip and torch, torch vision, torch audio, xformers, safe tensors, a thing called trampoline, and also the requirements.txt file, which it will find within that ComfyUI folder, which installs various dependencies that ComfyUI wants to use. The reason we're using such specific versions is to ensure compatibility across different things from ComfyUI, PyTorch, Torch Vision, xformers, and things like that. We can jump back into Jupyter Labs, okay, and Terminal's finished installing those requested dependencies. It's running the virtual environment, and we're in that ComfyUI folder. We can then jump back to the website and grab the next line, and this is going to create a new directory called Workspace ComfyUI Models and Checkpoints 2. I'll quickly show you why we're doing that. So in the folder structure here, if we double click on Workspace, you can see we've got our new ComfyUI installation. We can click on that. So this is all the software for your ComfyUI. So I'm going to jump into the models folder, and this is where you would normally install various models. So if you have any VAE, Upscale, LoRa's, ControlNet, checkpoints, these are the folders where you would normally install those. And that's true in all cases apart from checkpoints, which unfortunately is a folder name that Jupyter has some issues with as it's reserved for different functionality. So we need to create a new folder called checkpoints 2, and you could do this manually, but we're just going to paste that line of code, make directory workspace ComfyUI models /checkpoints 2 and press enter and refresh the page. And we now have that checkpoints 2 model. So a very quick thing, I just want to explain why we're doing that. We can then select the next bit of code, and this is going to tell Terminal to move within that checkpoints 2 folder and install this model here, Dreamshaper 8. I have got the code here for the Disney Pixar cartoon one as well, but I've commented that out using the hash symbol. It's then going to move into the LoRa's folder and install a PyTorch LoRa, which is a fairly new one allowing really fast generations. So let's copy that, paste, and press enter. And depending on the available internet speed of the instance that you're renting, it's going to take a while to download the various models. This one's done it really well. It's downloaded 1.9 gigabytes in 30 seconds, and it's completed. Okay, and now onto the next code block, which is going to create a file to tell ComfyUI to make use of that checkpoints 2 folder. So essentially, I'll show you what this is doing. Back in here, if we go up to ComfyUI, there's actually a file already called extraModel_paths.yaml.example, and this gives you a bit of example code which comes with ComfyUI. So if you wanted to change any of the directories for where something's saved, so if, for example, you're saving your ControlNets somewhere else, you could comment that out and tell it the new directory location. So this can be useful if you're running it locally and maybe you've used Automatic 1111 for your Stable Diffusion and you've got lots of models saved there. You could tell ComfyUI to access that folder or create a separate one somewhere else for both of them. I'm going to go here, copy this code, press paste and run it. And that's created a new file which has just got that bit of code in telling ComfyUI where our checkpoints 2 folder is, rather than editing that example. I'm then going to move down to the next block of code, also called block 4, because it seems I'm incapable of counting, and copy this code. And this is going to install various custom nodes in the custom nodes folder within ComfyUI, things like ComfyUI Manager, which is really useful for day-to-day usage in ComfyUI. There's animated diff, video helper suite, IP adapter, and a thing I created myself called ComfyUI Fat Labels that just generates big text in your UI to help with labeling, useful for things like tutorials. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to open up Terminal again as I accidentally closed it and press paste. And it's going to install that code, install those custom nodes into that folder. Done, nice and quick. Right, next we're going to go down to the next bit of code here. And this is going to install some models, safe tensors, and things like that to help those custom nodes run. So there's things for animated diff, IP adapter, and clip vision, which are all things that you'll find are very useful and popular in different workflows. So I'm going to copy that, press paste, press enter. You'll see we're using this code, telling it to get some files. It's navigating to this folder in Terminal, and it's downloading the files from this URL. Okay, and that's completed, downloading those various models. We can move on to the next step, block 5. So these are ControlNet models. If you're not going to be using ControlNet, you could skip this step. We can click all of these, press copy, back into Terminal and paste. and leave that installing these various control nets. And these include canny, depth, head, open pose, line art, and segment control nets, which tie in nicely with an After Effects plugin I'm making, allowing you to color scenes with the correct colors to align with ControlNet colors, as well as that open pose character rig, which you can then put into ComfyUI and have some extra control over the animation generations or still images. And with that complete, we can select the next bit of code, copy that, paste it into terminal and press enter. And this installs the upscaling models. That's done. On to the next bit of code. And this is the script for the start.sh file. So you can just copy this, paste it in, and that will tell Vast.ai what to run each time you run the instance afresh. Then for block 9, we have the last bit of code which you can use to run ComfyUI. But before we do that, if you spin down, we've got some extra custom nodes which you can install if you want to, some other models, plus links to the original ComfyUI software, Civit AI models, and other upscaling models. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to skip to block 9, where we set the port, tell it to update, kill any existing operations running on that port, navigate to the ComfyUI directory and run the virtual environment, activate it, and run the main.python file. So one more time, we select the code, copy that, move over to terminal, press paste and press enter. And the first time you do this, it'll take a little bit longer than normal. After this, it will be much quicker in the future. And it will go through the steps. And there you have it. It's up and running. And you can then jump over to the Vast website and press open. It may be on the first instance, it still says connecting, but you can press that and it should load up the ComfyUI interface. And if you go back in the future, it will say open. You can then explore ComfyUI, check out the default setup, check the models that have been loaded, play with the settings, open up the manager. And if you're opening someone else's workflow, it'll flag if there's any missing custom nodes. You can also use it to install other people's custom nodes, other models. A really, really handy tool. Back in Jupyter, if you go to the ComfyUI folder, you'll see there is an input and an outputs folder, and any generations you make will be saved in the output folder. And once you've finished working with ComfyUI, you've built up a workflow and you've generated everything you want to, you can head back to Vast. Back on the Vast website, you can go to your instance, and if you want to pause it, you can press stop, and this will stop you being charged for the GPU, and you'll simply be charged for that storage space. If you've completely finished using the instance and you don't want to be charged anything, you can delete it completely. It's worth noting that if you do pause it and the system isn't available, you won't be able to start it until it is. Okay, and so now you should have Vast set up with your own ComfyUI install, lots of different models, custom nodes, things like that, ready for you to explore and learn how to use ComfyUI and generate cool animation. I'm going to quickly take you through a process showing how you could use some control nets. Here's some I've quickly animated using my upcoming plugin in After Effects, and I've saved out a pass of the environment with that basic room and the character rig. I've then saved a PNG sequence of each of those into a zip file, which we can drag into the input folder on ComfyUI via Jupyter. Check at the bottom of the screen, as you can see the zip file uploading. Then once complete, you can right click on the zip file and choose Extract Archive. You can then double click on the folder, navigate to where your stills are, click on one of those, and you'll see the address for the files, which you can copy, and then wherever you need to add a directory in your ComfyUI workflow, making sure there's a / at the beginning and end of the destination. And I'll quickly take you through what my current workflow does, just to give you an idea of what you could build in ComfyUI as you learn the tools. I'll share a JSON file for this particular workflow so you can load it up yourself, and I'll put that either in the video description or on the ComfyUI tutorial page on aianimation.com. First of all, we have the models and text prompts, so you can put in a positive text prompt and your negative text prompt. Choose any models. We've got the Dream Shaper 8 model installed here, and depending on the model, you might need to set the clip set last layer. I've got it set to -2. And then down for super speed, I've got the new PyTorch LoRa, which enables much faster generations. I've then got a IPA adapter, which allows you to use an image, and I've generated the images actually via Midjourney in this instance. You can use the image along with the text prompt to help direct the animation visuals or the still image visual style. I've then got the animated diff loader with various settings, including the empty latent image size, which sets the resolution of the final output. And then there's the ControlNet setup, which has loaded the images from those 2 folders that I've uploaded. And again, there's various settings telling it to choose every however many frames, the number of frames to load in total, and if you want to skip any frames, and also choose which sort of ControlNet model you want to use. So in this instance, I'm using the segment and the open pose model. We then have my rule them all section, which has got the K sampler, where you can set your steps, your CFG amount, sampler name, scheduler, and these can have massive impacts on the quality of the output, the overall style, the speed of generations, and things like that. And it's a bit of a dark art deciding which numbers work best. And there's lots of information available on Discord. There's the seed amount, which affects the generation, and you can alter that each time or have it fixed so it's the same between generations as you change other settings. Then got the preview images and a video combine node, which turns it into an MP4 video file, which is automatically saved to your output file, or you can right click on it and save to your local computer. Okay, and that brings me to the end of a fairly dry tutorial where I've essentially been copying and pasting blocks of code to get ComfyUI up and running in the cloud. If you actually go through those steps without making a tutorial at the same time, it takes about 10 minutes from choosing your instance to opening ComfyUI. And it can be incredibly useful having ComfyUI running in the cloud on a separate machine, as it frees up your machine locally to work on your day job. Perhaps you're on a machine at home where the spec just isn't up to scratch, or perhaps you're using a Mac and despite having a high-spec machine, you're hitting multiple VRAM issues, things are crashing, or you're only able to generate very low-res output. So yeah, using something like Vast to rent these GPUs, install ComfyUI, have that folder structure can be really, really handy. So yeah, I'm going to share a few of the test generations I've made with that output I shared at the end of the video. And these are just things as I'm exploring different ways to use ComfyUI, trying to improve the output, have more control over the characters and the background. And I'll share news of the OpenPose ControlNet plugin I'm developing for Adobe After Effects. And lastly, please press like, leave a comment, let me know what you're working on, what you'd like to see in a future video, what you liked, disliked about this video. Yeah, head over to the Discord, come and chat there, share the tests you're working on, showcase your work. And of course, you can register for free at aianimation.com, build your creative profile, and as that site develops over time, hopefully it will lead to some ways for you to find client work, collaborate, and just showcase what you're up to. All right, have an awesome day. It's getting really sunny all of a sudden. Annoying. All right, have an awesome day. Cheers.